He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to the Marlow Show. I'm glad you're here. Busy show today. We had a lot to do. We also have a guest. Carl DeMaio is coming in. We're going to be talking California. We're going to be talking Gavin Newsom. We're going to be talking about fraud, because we've been talking a lot about fraud in Minnesota, which is great. It's good to talk about that, in Minneapolis in particular. But there's fraud all over the country, SNAP, welfare, etc. And hopefully we can have a renewed energy to have conversations about where people are abusing the systems and take that approach where we're trying to fight for Americans and treat the taxpayers as though we should be valued, and it should not be people's right to steal our money, which is essentially what's happening in a lot of these programs. SNAP is one of them. And again, blanket cutting off everyone's SNAP, I know it's politically risky, but if you pay attention to this thing, it is so rife with fraud and abuse. I got a clip of a woman on local Fox reacting to the idea of an 80 hours of work per month requirement. Check this out.
I don't think it's fair that he do that, but...
And you were saying you think it's going to hurt a lot of people?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely it's going to hurt a lot of people, because you never know, you know what? Especially now that we're in the holidays and everybody wants to have a good dinner and everything, and if you don't give it to them, it's going to be really hard.
It's very sudden.
So
and it will affect people.
It's 80 hours per month. It is not just work. You can do community service. You could do educational programs that you're enrolled in. You could do in a work program. Of course, you should have a job. You do job training. There's so many ways to get to 80 hours a month. I mean, I do 80 hours a week of this stuff. I mean, many of you do as well. And that's in order to get additional government benefits, which jack up your hourly rate. And people are outraged they have to do this. And I say, if you're missing the visuals on this, what do I have to say? I'm not trying to fat shame people. That's not the point, even though fat shaming does work. It probably does make people healthier. I'll tell you, I've lost weight when people have made fun of me for one thing or another over the years. But it's this person talking about her Christmas dinner, that you, the taxpayer, are entitled to pay for this woman's Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner. Or around the holidays. She doesn't say Christmas. She says the holidays. And so, but check this out. Watch it one more time.
I don't think it's fair that he do that, but...
And you were saying you think it's going to hurt a lot of people?
Oh,
it's not fair that you don't pay for my dinner.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely it's going to hurt a lot of people, because you never know, you know what? Especially now that we're in the holidays and everybody wants to have a good dinner and everything, and if you don't give it to them, it's going to be really hard.
It's very sudden, and it will
this
affect
woman
people.
Has a waddle under her neck. Also, she needs to eat less. It's true. I wonder. I talked about this to Senator Ernst yesterday. Do you think thinks that N in stat means nuggets? She certainly does. Again, I'm not trying to fat shame. I'm not trying to make fun of her. I'm only saying this because the entitlement that you are required by the government to get money for people can get obese and then get government health care, broken system. Taxpayer funded Ozempic. That's what I'm going to start advocating for, or a GL1P, GPL, whatever we call it, whatever the GLP ones. That's what we're doing. All right, that's it. Just irresistible place to start. But I'll go somewhere negative, but also kind of fired up about this. But we have a major story, scandal that's broken, and it's leading Breitbart News as I'm recording this. It revealed a UK plot to destroy Breitbart. It's a bombshell report that Keir Starmer's chief of staff ran a secret censorship campaign. This guy named Morgan McSweeney, who is the most powerful unelected official in British politics, literally the most powerful person. And he ran a campaign that was trying to destroy Breitbart, and it was effective at destroying others, which is just completely wild. The reporting that we cover is from Dropsite News, which is run by Ryan Grimm, who is a populist, I would say left populist reporter who gets a lot right, very aggressive. And it is based off of the reporting of a South African journalist named Paul Holden, who's an investigative reporter, who has got a book that's coming out. What is the book called? I want to be fair here, make sure you get a good plug, called The Fraud, Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney, and the Crisis of British Democracy. So I just want to make sure you get those plugs in there, but the reporting said that Keir Starmer had a secret campaign running a machine to demonetize Breitbart and other outlets that he deemed to be a threat. And this should be so striking to people in this audience because America, for all the complaints we have about it, for all the complaints we have to hear about it, we have the First Amendment in this country. And it is such a protection. It's such a gift that we have this. But also, it's so outrageous that knowing that that's what we stand for, to attack American companies. Because why? Because we have a handful of reporters who report negatively about Keir Starmer and about the Labor Party. And what's interesting is that this originated as an effort to go after Jeremy Corbyn, who is a far left radical but populist figure in UK politics we've covered. We are very anti Jeremy Corbyn, largely because he's on the left, even though we like the populism, but he's on the left and he's virulently anti-Israel. We're a very pro-Israel company, as you know, and you hear from me all the time. But it was started to a way to suppress left-wing outlets that were pro-Corbyn, and they succeeded at that. And a lot of them did go out of business. So this is where Starmer was fighting with Corbyn for leadership of the Labor Party, and when Trump was out of power. So Trump couldn't really say much. Any prominent conservative figures in the MAGA world couldn't say anything. And they're going after Breitbart in particular, Federalist, Zero Hedge, and a few other outlets, some of which went out of business. So we need a lot of accountability here. We need more details to come through, but we need activism. And Trump needs to put pressure on Keir Starmer, who is now the prime minister of the country, to figure out how this came about and a commitment that he's not going to censor American outlets who are trying to do reporting. We want to have a planet that is free speech on it. And we'll fight wars for it here. We're not going to fight wars abroad for it. But this is something that we should insist with our partners. People who have a special relationship, as we do with the UK, that they don't try to put people like me out of work because we would dare to report accurate, factual things about things they don't like in the UK. So I want huge levels of pressure put on. Big story, got to write up. Oliver Lane did an amazing job writing it up for us at Breitbart News. And it's big news breaking. More big news today. And this is one where there's not a lot to report. But they caught the J6 pipe bomber, according to the FBI. Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel gave a press conference. Bongino looked absolutely giddy, so that was fun. So they're excited about this guy. It's all I can report is he lives in a big house. So he's apparently an anarchist, and I'm guessing we're going to figure out it's a younger guy who lives with his family. But this is one where this was a viable pipe bomb. This could have killed a lot of people. We've got this increasing culture of murder, assassinations in this country. And this is a story that has really confounded law enforcement for 4 years. And now we're getting some answers. So this could be a big W for the FBI and just a W for the truth in general. So this is a big investigation. And it kind of feels like now the beginning of it. Now, I think Bongino used top of the first inning analogy, which is hopefully it's not that early on, but hopefully this is fairly early on, so we'll learn a lot more. But just the true story of J6 is just, which I write a fair bit about in Breaking the News. It's not the centerpiece of it, but it's obviously not what the media had reported. And every time we get a new detail, it always makes MAGA look slightly better and the left look slightly worse. So it's really important to do that. All right, before I go further, I mentioned how much we love the Jews in Israel. I want to talk about my International Fellowship of Christians and Jews partnership. Cold comes swiftly to Ukraine, and for elderly Jews like Olga, it can be deadly. Olga is a 79-year-old, and she lives in a small village where there's no indoor plumbing, bathrooms, or reliable heating. Her meager pension is not enough to cover food and medicine and heat, but thanks to the International Fellowship of Christian and Jews, Olga received a nourishing food box, emergency lighting, and a warm blanket. The aid's a life-saving gift for someone like Olga. The visit from fellowship staff remind her she is not forgotten. Now, as another brutal winter begins, thousands of elderly Jews like Olga are praying for a miracle. And you can be that miracle through a special matching grant. Your gift today has twice the impact, up to the first $50,000. Don't delay. Your gift today will help provide the life-saving food and hope that Olga and many like her so desperately need. To donate, visit urgentIL.org. urgentifcj.org. That's one word, urgentifcj.org. You can call now 866-338-IFCJ. That's 866-338-4325. I hope as you guys are doing your charity, you're thinking about these terrific sponsors to the show, all of which I am very thrilled to partner with. Like the International Fellowship of Christian Jews, hoping some of your charity goes to one of these places the holiday season. All right. Next up, so yesterday I will direct you to my X the Everything app account or my YouTube feed. We got a lot of new YouTube subscribers yesterday, which is nice. Like to see that. They were deeply censored in the algorithm over there, but still good to see it. But I went on Laura Ingram's show to talk about the Scott Bessent interview with the New York Times, which I played a clip on yesterday's show, but I hadn't watched the full thing. It is unbelievable. So he went to the Deal Book Summit at the New York Times, and it was a true masterclass. I guess I still slightly prefer my 40 minutes with him over what we saw on stage at the Deal Book Summit for the New York Times. But man, it was really close. There were some serious highlights and some big takeaways I had from it. But we've got a clip that I want to play before I dig into my analysis of it.
The question is, is this like a new normal?
That, Andrew, there's no new normal. And, I can tell you that I actually don't read the New York Times anymore. That sometimes I do watch CNBC, but, occasionally people send me articles, and there's just this fever swamp. And, you're now a pop historian with 19.
So before we get to that's a dig that he's a pop historian because he wrote a popular book about, I think, a stock market crash 100 years ago. So maybe it's a good book. I don't know. Maybe we'll get around to reading it. But he's taking a dig at the reporter right in front of him, Andrew Ross Sorkin, who's a very well-known financial journalist. But the fact that the Treasury Secretary, Yale-educated, Yale professor, worth $600 million, and one of the most powerful of the cabinet secretaries, one of the most educated, one of the most cultured, comes out and says, I don't read the New York Times. Do you know how great this is? The old guard of the Trump administration, so the first Trump term, Trump 45, all of those cabinet members wanted great coverage in the New York Times. And I want to do a drive-by on individuals, but a lot of names probably are popping to mind for you. People who worked night and day to make sure that in the New York Times they were covered favorably. Now we've got Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, coming into a New York Times event and saying, I do not read the New York Times. Insulting them to their face, insulting their brand to their face. And he says, someone once forwarded me an article from there. I mean, it's objectively hilarious. It's hilarious and aggressive, in your face, but polite, but still aggressive. It's just a very special moment. That is just the fact that he's got the balls. He's just got the balls. So fun. Here we go. Let's play some more.
1929. And, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, the New York Times is no longer the paper of record. You can't go, I read this article, President Trump is slowing down, President Trump's mental capacity. It is 100% fake. That he only called me twice at 2 a.m. last week.
This has nothing to do with the economics. This is an economic journalist. This is the Treasury Secretary. And he is changing the subject to dunk in the New York Times to their face. Scott Bessent has an obvious visceral dislike of the New York Times. Do you know how wonderful that is? Particularly for someone like me who would like to think of myself as a cultured, educated person, has spent my entire career trying to suggest to people the New York Times is fake news. Way more fake news than Breitbart. Bessent, of course, a reader of the Breitbart Business Digest, as he said at our conversation last week. I can't emphasize this point enough, how important this moment is, especially if we cement it and we make this the standard within the Trump administration. And we make sure that the Trump administration becomes, the Vance or Rubio administration, whatever's next. Make sure MAGA's still going. So this is what we wanted. We wanted the rejection of the establishment media so they don't even care about them. And it's the alternative media that is reporting the truth that we're the ones who they're looking at for guidance and for leadership.
Instead of 3 times.
You're saying he called you. I believe that he called you at 2 or 3 in the morning.
That whole narrative, you had what was one of the greatest scandals of all time, that the coverage of the Biden administration, Joe Biden's diminished capacity, and the cover-up.
And that's why it's probably fair to raise these questions.
Where was the New York Times? We just had a 3-hour cabinet meeting yesterday, Andrew. For 10 months, the Biden administration did not have a cabinet meeting. How are you going to invoke the 25th Amendment if the cabinet secretaries never see the president, which they didn't? That, I hear from people in the Treasury building that I see President Trump more in a day than my predecessor saw Joe Biden in half a year.
Devastating, totally devastating attack. And that's why I asked him, as a big part of the interview, I said, how are you so good at arguing with idiots? And I traced it back to his Yale days. Of course, he was so classy that he spoke very highly of his students, but he's great at talking to people who think they're smart but know nothing. Here was his quote: "They have opinions, I have facts." That's how he phrased it, and that's exactly what we're witnessing here. These are not dumb people he's talking to, but they're ignorant people. And you guys know what I think of the Biden cover-up. I don't think there was a cover-up. I think that everyone knew about Biden's decline. I don't think it was covered up. I think it was well known, but the media didn't care, which I think is even worse. And now all of a sudden, they care about Trump, who's obviously robust and sharp and healthy from all known reports, all data, all observable truths. And this is all the more reason we don't need to listen to them at all. They don't all of a sudden care about Trump. They do this because they're just trying to set narrative. So it's a really fascinating conversation. He talks about how they got the tariffs right and explain to the New York Times audience. It's also so big. He gets to explain to the New York Times audience the goal of Trump's tariff policies, how the goal was to rebalance global trade. It was to bring back domestic production. And he just roasts all sorts of different establishment people. And then he's getting the talking points honed and dialed, where Andrew Ross Sorkin brings up affordability, and he blames it on, of course, Biden, but also on the Fed for not raising rates. For not lowering rates. He thinks all the more reason the Fed should lower rates. He roasts Biden, and he roasts the media for not demanding the Biden administration de-risk America from China, which was a big topic of conversation during our conversation on the Marlow Show feed. You should go back and listen to it. So he said that Biden should be ashamed because he did nothing to de-risk from China. And then they get into something that was so delicious, so unbelievable. They end up having a fight about the movie Rush Hour 4. And this is where I knew Besson is just too good. And he somehow got Andrew Ross Sorkin, who's got 40 minutes, one of the most powerful people on earth, massive forum. Everyone's going to clip it. Everyone's going to quote it. And he somehow got whether or not Rush Hour 4 is only getting made because Trump wanted it to get made and Paramount wants a merger deal to go through. In an era where we have so much lobbying, we have so many, the revolving door between the defense industry and big tech and the upper echelons of our deep state, Biden's in particular. And just the thought that Rush Hour 4, because Trump wants to see Rush Hour 4, it's just being made just for Trump, and that's supposed to be some sort of an outrage or scandal, that this is where time was taken in this conversation. There's just massive corruption in this country. And that's the suggestion that this New York Times reporter said, well, Rush Hour 4 is getting made with Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. I really like those karate kicks, but this shouldn't be happening. So great. So great. Absolute masterclass from Besant. And I've linked up the full New York Times video on my page, the X on X the Everything app, so you guys can check that out. And you really should, but I think my summary is pretty good as well. But just tuning in for the Rush Hour parts, pretty good. All right. I'm going to tell you about something I've been doing on my recovery. I've been on a back of my workout kick. I tell you guys something that was just such a bummer is that I was going to set a record on my exercise bike for most rides in a month in October. And then a belt broke on my bike. And it takes forever to get repaired. It's not repaired yet. My repair date is now December 10th. And it completely derailed a good workout path. But now I'm back on my game, 3 in a row this week so far. And I'll tell you how I'm recovering with the Super Palm 1050. And I got a promo code for you, so stay tuned for that. SunPower LED, handheld device, really small. I'm looking at mine now. It's like a shoebox, but like for my kids, like a kid-sized shoes box. Really small thing. 600 nanometer red light, 1050 nanometer near infrared light. It digs deep into the muscle and the bone and the joints. Lots of energy, heats up fast, faster sessions, but it's safe. So they have safety as top priority, special cooling fan, temperature monitoring, and a fuse circuit, patent pending cooling system. And all this is just cutting edge technology. We know red light is becoming very popular to use for all sorts of different healing, wellness. And this is even the near infrared, which is just amped up for quicker sessions and deeper penetration to help you feel better. It's part of my daily routine now. I could do lower back, knees have been a little sore, using on all that, and it's going great for me so far, and I highly recommend you give it a shot. Super Palm 1050 is the product. sunpowerled.com is a website. Promo code Marlow will get you 10% off. All right, other items to talk about with you today. Yeah, also at the Deal Book Summit, Halle Berry spoke. Gavin Newsom spoke. But Halle Berry, the actress, beautiful actress, she was championing a bill in California that made more health benefits available for women going through menopause. And Gavin Newsom blocked it twice. And she went to town on him in front of a very friendly Newsom-centric audience. So we have a Hollywood royalty going after Hollywood's chosen candidate thus far. This is pretty sweet. Check this out.
But the opposite of that, back in my great state of California, my very own governor, Gavin Newsom, has vetoed our menopause bill, not 1, but 2 years in a row. But that's okay, because he's not going to be governor forever. And with the way he's overlooked women, half the population, by devaluing us in midlife, he probably should not be our next president either.
Wow.
Just saying. I need every woman in this country to fight with me. But the truth is, the fight isn't just for us women. We need men too. We need all of the leaders, every single one of you in this room. This fight needs you.
It's just great. It's great to see the Democrats going to have to do their fighting too. They're not going to get a coordination for Newsom. Remember, Kamala Harris probably still thinking about running. I don't think she really wants it, but she might try just to save face, but just because she was so humiliated last time. And Harris World might draft her. Harris World might decide that her backers, the Ream Powell jobs, one of the most powerful Democrats around, might say, we got to push her into it. And so you don't know how California is going to go. The Democrat Party is concentrated in the New York area and the California area. So let's see what happens. But if you think California is just going to line up on Hollywood for sure, well, Halle Berry's got a thing or two to say about that, and I welcome it. We'll be giving this plenty of air on the Marlow Show as time goes on. All right, other items that are going on. I think we should do an update on the Venezuela boats. I'll plug my Breitbart Fight Club show, Breitbart Confidential for premium members, where I do a deep dive investigation every day with one of my editors at Breitbart. Today, it is into the Venezuela drug boats, which that's what they are. And people were acting like, well, maybe they're not drug boats. Oh, they've always been drug boats. We've always known they're drug boats. They're definitely drug boats. And we look into, with Francis Martel, all the details of what we know about this, why we're bombing them, why it's legit, why we should keep bombing them, why it's not a big deal, and everything you need to know, and why we're probably not going to do regime change war, even though Maduro's horrible. But we got some breaking news. This is from Martha Raddatz, of all people, about this boat that Pete Hegseth allegedly committed a war crime to bomb. Check this.
And tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the 2 survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice. So again, David, that video will be key, and Admiral Bradley will be on the Hill tomorrow behind closed doors.
How great is that? Nice pull from Newsbusters. So when we did the double tap that everyone's so outraged, why did we keep blowing up survivors? Because they were all cartel members and drug dealers. And they got back on the boat to try to salvage some of the drugs. Priceless, right? And we were told this was Kilmar Abrego Garcia part 2. We were told this was the biggest scandal. That Hegseth committed war crimes, even though we're not in a war. Not crimes against humanity, but war crimes. All right, we got a clip of Senator Cotton weighing in. Check it.
Senator, you said that the strikes were righteous, that there were 4 of them. Would you have taken the same shot if you were in that position? I was Admiral Bradley and I'd been delegated that authority, absolutely. And I'd do it again.
Was there more than 4 shots?
No, there's 4.
Of course. Bomb more drug boats. Bomb more drug boats. 97.3 issue. And guys, I said this, you heard it in the Marlow Show first, when everyone didn't know what to make of this. I said, I think the left's fallen for a trap here. And that was the trap. That Martha Raddatz quote gave it away. They knew it was drug boats. They knew they double tapped or whatever to make sure they killed all the cartel members. Where they're trying to flood our country with illegal drugs to ruin our communities and to kill Americans. Should not be acceptable. All right. But still, you got the Democrats who are just waging their coup. I mentioned this, I think, briefly, verbally on the show. Maybe not. I think I did yesterday. But we got this clip of Senator Warner this was the lead of Breitbart yesterday. You have to hear this. It's important.
Unprecedented disrespect when they were all brought to get a pep rally in front of Hegseth and Trump. This is an administration that's fired, uniform generals from the head of the NSA, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I think in many ways, the uniform military may help save us from this president and his lame people like Hegseth, because I think their commitment is to the Constitution and obviously not to Trump. And I expect Bradley to adhere to that.
So, Senator, let's go a little further on this. What are concerns you have about the legality of these strikes at all?
I got to say that whatever follow-up is coming is not a good follow-up, because listen to this part in the middle of his answer.
Unprecedented disrespect when they were all brought to get a pep rally in front of Hegseth and Trump. This is an administration that's fired, uniform generals from the head of the NSA, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I think in many ways, the uniform military may help save us from this president and his...
The uniform military is going to help save us from this president. Is that not openly calling for a coup? And the MS Now guy, he's just moving on. How are uniform military members going to save us? By defying orders from their commander-in-chief? Remarkable. Completely remarkable. They don't care about Americans. And before I make this point, let me just say, I think part of this is that they want Hegseth's scalp. They tried to block him in the confirmation process. They tried to get him kicked out when they had the Signal Gate, where they were texting on Signal, the fist emoji and the bomb emoji, fire emoji. Try to get him for that. They keep trying to get this guy and they can't. And he's doing a better job as Department of War, Secretary of War, than Lloyd Austin, who would duck out for days on end, not tell anyone, was part of this revolving door with Raytheon, where he's just making a bunch of money in corporate board. And it was completely AWOL all the time. And then he'd show up and he'd be DEI. He'd have a big, face shield, which never worked for coronavirus. He was completely pathetic. And so you get a general, and general's pathetic. And then you get a guy who's lower ranking, but deeply cares about the military and America being a strong fighting force and covering tattoos. And then he does a great job. They can't handle this. They can't handle this. It's so good. It's so delish. I'm serious. They don't care about Americans. They're trying to rewrite our history. The left is, the Democrats, in order to make it seem like America is a horrible country. Here's an example. This is Pramila Jayapal, who was on, where else? MS Now, and talking about immigration. Check this.
The majority of Americans across the country, regardless of political party, know that immigrants from all over the world, Somalia, India, wherever they're from, Latin America, Africa, that immigrants have built this country and make this country what it is today.
So 2 parts here. First one, Somalia and India. I don't think Somalia and Indian immigrants built this country. A lot of Latin American immigrants, I guess technically, were probably even here. So it's just so imprecise and just pandering. Do any of you think that Somalian and Indian immigrants built this country? None of you think that. She doesn't think that. She just says it because, that sounds good. That sounds really woke. It's just a complete lie, and just know how much they're straining to try to make sure that not only we have infinite supplies of immigrants to come in and get the great replacement going, but that they are entitled to defraud the system. That's why she cites Somalia first. When there's this mountains of evidence in Minnesota that Somalian communities were defrauding organizations, trying to bilk taxpayers of money, committing vast levels of fraud. They don't care about Americans. That's why they want the drugs in. They only care about people from overseas because that cements their political power, and they just don't like this country. That's what I've been saying. This was so harsh on people's ears when I used to say it 10 years ago, and now people are getting it. That the left, not all liberals, but the left, they don't like America. They don't like it. So this way, we got to put out a winning message. But a bunch of other good stuff. Trump's rolling back Biden-era fuel efficiency standards. That's great. Just a huge story. I should spend a whole show on this. Maybe I'll save some of this for tomorrow. But Nature, which is a very popular science journal, is retracting a study that came out last year that predicted that climate change would cause far more economic damage by the end of the century than previously estimated. So they updated their numbers last year, saying that climate change is going to cause huge levels of economic damage, and they retracted it. Good for them for retracting it. They normally just leave this stuff out there. But this is the end. Since my entire adult life, we've been fighting the as my friend James Ellingpole puts it, the watermelons, where it's green on the outside, but it's red on the inside. It's communism, but it's wrapped in environmentalism. And we've been fighting this my entire adult life. And it just seems like day after day, it seems like more evidence that Americans are moving on. And they're just not having it as a top tier issue. Such a victory. There's a lot of great stuff happening in this country. A lot of great stuff. And let's make sure we're able to talk about some of it on the show, not just all be negative. All right. That is my cue to bring Carl DeMaio. He's coming in, and we're talking California. Newsom. He's a really sharp guy. You're going to like this. And a lot about he answered a lot of questions you probably got about what's ahead for this country. Check it out. All right. You guys know I talk a lot about California. It's my home state. It's where I'm sitting right now. And Carl DeMaio is one of the people who has done some of the best activism, I think, on behalf of conservatives in the state. Recently, a pretty tireless guy, and I think he understands the state, why it's important, and what we could potentially do to start fixing some of the corruption. And Carl, I just want to start there with this general premise here, that California it's worth the effort, and I'm making it on a personal level. It's very demoralizing, and the deck is stacked against us, but make the case, because a lot of my audience, not California, they don't even understand. I get into this all the time on the show, why it's not that bad of a place. There's a lot of positive stuff here, and we do want to make it better. We don't just want to give up on it. So, but it's bleak some days. Give us your sort of unified field theory on all that.
Well, let me start with this. If you've been to California, you love the environment, but you hate everything else. And everything else really is what government can screw up. You know, bad schools, bad roads, high cost of living, too many regulations, so it kills jobs, infringement on personal freedoms. The list goes on and on. So we are blessed by, well, nice weather and nice people, but we are cursed by a wretchedly corrupt government. And the effect of that are all these ailments in these issues. We are the worst in all of these areas: cost of living, homelessness, crime, job losses. We are the worst of any state by every single of these metrics. Now, what people do not understand, and you don't understand this unless you're a relatively older Californian, is you don't know how bad it is today if you never experienced how good it was decades ago. So growing up in California, I remembered thinking, wow, this is a very prosperous state. It's a safe state. It's a clean state. And if you get out here to California, you can become anything. California was sort of like a little America within the United States of America. People come from all around the world to the United States of America because it's the land of opportunity. And they can always get a refresh, a restart. California was the state within the U.S. where you could go to from Massachusetts or New York or New Jersey or the South or the Midwest. You could leave that part of the country, go to California for a fresh start, knowing that the schools were great, the economy was strong, the communities were clean and safe, and that's why it was such an attraction. We used to travel the country decades ago, 1980s, 90s, and people would ask us, where are you from? And we would say, we'd pump up our chest, we'd say, California. And they would say, ooh, right. Yeah, not anymore. Now when people say, where are you from? We're embarrassed. We're like the car accident on the side of the freeway. And when I tell this story to young kids in California, their jaws hit the floor. They're like, really? People used to move to California versus away from California?
Yeah.
You don't know how bad it is now in California if you never experienced how good it was just 25, 30 years ago. And for people nationally, why you should care about what's going on in California is really twofold. Number one, bad ideas start in California and they're exported to your state. So we're like the petri dish of bad ideas on the left. And they get it off the ground here in California. Then they go nationwide and tell people, oh, it's working in California just fine. You should try it too. And so you should help stop that in California before it spreads. But the second reason why you need to pay attention to California is that you cannot have a strong, prosperous, safe America with a sick California. Because, we're the ones in California enticing illegal immigrants to come to this country by giving away generous welfare benefits and constantly attacking border agents and ICE agents here in the state of California and undermining. Cartels and criminal organizations are able to get across and operate in California, and then they expand nationwide. If you don't have a strong economy in California, it will drag down the rest of the country. So you have to pay attention to what's going on in the most populous state because it does have an impact nationally.
Right. So I think you touched on a lot of super important things here. There's also so many conservative Republicans who are here. I think that that's important, and we care about these individuals. You should care about families like my family who moved here to be closer to family and because of business opportunities, work opportunities. And I just don't think it makes sense just to abandon all of us. I'm a pretty good contributor to the conservative movement. Just one example of millions in the state. So if you think of it that way, I think that's important. And then also you touched on something that's so big that my dad moved here from the East Coast with nothing, with no job, with no money and no prospects, and built this great life in California. And then to see that now there's, constant discussion, there's always constant discussion. Anyone who's a conservative in this state thinks about moving all the time. That's a whirlwind, whiplash level crazy thing that happened, that this was the state to move to, that people would risk it all to come here. And that was not that long ago. And now everyone's thinking you're crazy if you stay. It's not great. It's not a great sign for the whole nation in general if we have that.
Well, you're crazy if you stay if we tolerate the ineptitude and corruption of the California Republican Party. Let me be quite clear. I am going to blame the Democrats for the mess that California is in because they are the ones in charge. They have bad ideas. They've run the state in the ground. But I cannot excuse the culpability of the establishment of the Republican Party in California that for the past 25 years has done nothing but surrender and sell us out. They're not fighting. They're not leading. They're not offering bold alternatives. Their political consultants are grifting off of whatever little resources we do have for the fight. And their consultants say, well, in order to compete in California, become more like a Democrat. No. Be out, be proud, and be conservative. Offer a bold conservative alternative. And if voters want to reject that, so be it, but at least be genuine and authentic. But we haven't done that. And the California Republican Party has not had a comprehensive plan. It's why I formed Reform California in 2017, is I saw this lack of leadership and said, the grassroots need to do this on our own. And I think the professional political class will catch up to us. If we create a parade of a revolt marching down the street, the establishment politicians will figure out a way to take credit for it and get to the front of it. So be it, whatever. As long as everyone shows up at the end, that's what matters, is we need as many people as possible. But it's not going to start. It's not going to be formed by the establishment because they have utterly failed us. And they actually benefit from the broken system. A lot of these establishment Republicans are perfectly fine being part of the super minority as long as they have a seat and a title. And so we have to change the culture and clean up the mess and the rot and the dysfunction on the Republican side of the aisle in order to really be able to move California forward. And that's what we're focused on at Reform California. And we're starting to see some really good results with our approach.
So the Republican Party in California has always been an embarrassment. I'll tell you that I was a college Republican at UC Berkeley 20 years ago, and I was very reluctant to get involved. And I've told the story a lot to my audience, but I got involved because I knew I was loosely a conservative. I didn't know if I was a libertarian or a conservative, but I knew that I hated the left and I thought liberals were destroying things. And it was really the only club in town. It was a massive club. It was really great. There's a lot of diversity of opinion, but I was always very reluctantly Republican. And I was just blown away at how we wouldn't even contest major elections, that we would have no hope. You go into every single election, and when you're a young person who's just getting involved and you realize, oh man, we're just on a team, we're on the Washington
We're on the
Senators
loser team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
they don't even file, Republicans don't even file candidates for office. I go around the state and I say, look, if you have a pulse and no felony record, I want to file you for office because I need an alternative. You're far more qualified than the left-wing lunatic that's in there. Most people say, who, me? Am I qualified to run for office? Yes. And the role of a political party should be candidate recruitment. They should be out there making it easy for good people to actually file the paperwork to run for office. But the Republican Party has basically given up. And so we have a number of problems that we have to clean up internally first before we could actually mount the field and compete against Democrats. And that's, again, what my focus is making sure that we not give a pass to our own party, that we demand better. And I've told activists out there, don't give to the national party, the Republican Party nationally, because they're not going to send that money back here. The national party sees California as an ATM machine. They take the money and they spend it elsewhere.
Yeah. But this is big. I want to drill in.
They're not actually fighting. Instead, find a good candidate that you can meet personally, volunteer for their campaign, and if you feel as though they have a chance and that they're legitimate, chip in. Because candidates will always spend money more effectively than a party or an outside political group, and then get involved in causes. But we have so many conservatives in California who are hopeless. That's another thing that we're trying to do is, in addition to recruiting candidates, we need to give people hope. And that means we go to people and we let them know, A, that there is a fight that we can actually win. B, here's the plan to win the fight. C, here are some tools that you can pick up and actually use. And D, we will support you every step of the way. It's igniting the grassroots activist, which I think is so critical because in politics, you have the 3 M's: money, media, and a movement. We're never going to have the money the Democrats have. The media lies in California, so we're not going to get a fair shake there, although digital media is certainly breaking through and groups like Breitbart are paying attention to California. But the third is the movement. And I'll take a movement any day of the week over money plus media, because politics, to move the needle, is all about friend telling friend, neighbor telling neighbor, mom telling daughter, father telling son, colleague telling coworker. It is the viral marketing that is the most important. And that's where Democrats do it so much better in California. If we reignite our grassroots movement, I believe we will be competitive, even if we don't have the media and the money that the Democrats have.
Yeah, this is crucial. And this is, I think, what is inspiring and exciting in a way, but also very demoralizing in ways. I feel like we can solve problems. We proved it on a national level. We had this massive turnaround. That my idea is the sort of America First conservative, the populist nationalist conservative ideas that were considered fringe or cancelable, even though they were totally reasonable and I think normative 10 years ago, are now the ascendant political worldview in the country. That's a very amazing thing that happened. So I've always hold out hope that we can make change here. But this is the point here, Carl, that I want to make that's so scary to me, is that I showed up at Republican events when I was 18, 19 years old and was completely disappointed. And then it feels like they've given us nothing in the 20 years since. And how can that be okay? And why is it happening?
It's because, as I mentioned, the establishment Republicans have been co-opted by a corrupt system. And backing up to your point, I absolutely agree with you. The problems themselves are not hard to solve. The cost of living crisis in California, the bad schools, the bad roads, the crime, the grime, the homelessness, those are awful problems. But you have 49 other states that you can benchmark against who are doing it far better. And so I always tell people, hey, let's just, let's be audacious and bold. Let's just be as screwed up as the average state of the union.
Right.
Because if you take the gentleman's C, if you're just benchmarked average in California, our quality of life is going to skyrocket. It's going to be brilliant to live out here if we're just the average state in the union on all the indicators. And so what you can do is literally copy their policies. So the problem is not solving those issues. The real problem as to why those issues are so bad is we have a fundamentally corrupt and broken political system where only the mega rich, the special interests benefit. And so they love the system, and they're going to write big checks to keep the system just as it is, serving them at your expense.
Yeah.
And they go to the Republicans and they tell them, here's the deal. You're part of the super minority. So already we're not getting the best and brightest to run for office. I mean, would you run for the legislature if you knew that none of your bills of consequence were going to pass? You're going to have your microphone turned off. You'd be completely ignored and shunned and not involved in any of the decision making or the meetings. People, imagine the Republicans that are there. This is the best job they've ever had. I mean, it's this or run a Rotary Club back home. So you get the bottom of the barrel. Let's just be blunt. In previous cycles, we've had really, not so good Republicans in office. Some of them are great, but it's not something that attracts the best talent. And so those people are approached by lobbyists and they say, hey, come to our steak dinner tonight. Oh, we're going to buy you. I mean, I'm in the legislature. I've not been to a single reception or dinner. But these dinners and receptions, there's like 25 of them a night in Sacramento when the legislature's in session. So these legislators from both parties go and they get drunk every night. They are wined and dined every night. They get $1.4 million in gifts from special interests last year alone, which is about $11,000 on average per legislator. It's appalling. I don't know about you, but I don't think people are just randomly giving you $11,000 in gifts per year.
No, I don't. I don't think anyone has ever gotten me an $11,000 gift ever.
No, and so these Republicans are seduced, and they're told by the special interest lobbyists, look, don't rock the boat. And if you want to, you can walk off the floor and not vote on a bad bill, but try not to. And every once in a while, we'll even let you vote no on a bill, but just simmer down and don't really fight us. And in exchange, we'll leave your seat alone, at least for now. And if you run for higher office, well, there's a couple congressional seats left for Republicans, we'll leave you alone. That literally is the conversation that goes on. And they also tell these politicians, since there's not a lot of upscale career advancement for Republicans, when you term out of office, we'll hire you as a consultant or a lobbyist. So take a look at the number of former Republican legislators in California who are now lobbyists or government affairs reps or political consultants. It's appalling. Or even they work for the government. They get an appointment from the governor of the Democrat machine will give them an appointment to kind of keep them, afloat because they did some good things for them. They traded some favors. This is not an opposition party. This is Stockholm syndrome. And we need to have a loyal but fierce opposition party in California. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run for the state assembly. As I said, I need to get in the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
Agitate from inside. And
Good.
What we've been able to do is move the needle. And next year and the following year, we want to amp up the pressure by
keep
getting
doing it.
better fighters elected to the legislature.
All right. I got a few more, Carl. We don't have too much more time. But one thing that I want to point out is that our governor is running for president. Currently, he's not governing. I've lived in this state most of my life, and of all the major problems we've had, zero have gotten fixed, from the cost of living to the homelessness to the traffic to the horrible airports to the illegal immigration making our school systems too expensive. I can't think of one thing that's improved in this state unless, of course, you're a man who wants to run track against women.
The street price of drugs is great.
Yeah. Good. I wasn't even aware of that.
Street price of drugs. We're best at street price of drugs and opportunities for biological males to compete against girls. Those are the two categories where California has absolutely topped every other state.
So give me your perspective on this. You think about this even more than I do. And so just reflect on what I just said. And then how is it possible that the guy who's been the single most prominent politician in a state with that sort of a track record could potentially be the president in 4 years?
Oh, because he's delivered for the special interest billionaires. Oh, let's be quite clear. California is working for the dark money PACs, the Wall Street executives, the hedge fund guys. It has always served their interests, the union bosses. So they love him because he's delivered at your expense. And they've covered up his misdeeds, his corruption, and his failures. So now he's running around the United States with the backing of those dark forces, with the funding of those dark forces, because now they're licking their chops thinking, oh, he's going to do the same thing for us in the White House, and there's just going to be more money to deal with. At least this time we can print money and borrow trillions of dollars. This guy is dangerous. Gavin Newsom is quite dangerous. The one thing he's quite accomplished in is lying. He can lie straight to the camera and have no problem whatsoever about it. He would sell his mother if it meant he could advance politically. So, he's very dangerous. He's underestimated. He's a dummy, but he's very crafty as a con artist. And so that creates a very big danger to the United States because people discount him at their own peril.
I want to talk about welfare fraud. There's a lot of talk about welfare fraud in Minnesota this week. I mean, I'm happy about it. That sounds great, but I imagine it's way worse.
We're happy they're talking about it, right?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, but what about where we're at? I mean, there's no way it's a fraction of what it is in California.
Oh, yeah. When the $1 billion of fraud came out against Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Gavin Newsom's like, bitch, hold my beer, because he has tens of billions of dollars of welfare fraud, $30 billion of unemployment fraud just over an 18-month period. And he borrowed $20 billion for the unemployment system at taxpayers' expense, gave all that money away to fraudsters, and now is raising the payroll tax on small businesses to pay off his debt. He's not even paying off the principal on the debt. Then you have the food stamp fraud, which Waltz got in trouble for. But again, California is far worse. 3 out of 20 food stamp benefits in California are fraudulent. We have a 13.4% error rate in the state of California. And the reason why the Trump administration is quite right to be cracking down on the food stamp fraud is that the way the food stamp program works is that the states don't actually pay the money. The states administer the program. They determine who's eligible and they cut the check. You know who has to pay for the check? The federal government. The federal government basically funds the program. So if you've got a state, there is no incentive for them to get the benefit allocation right, to root out fraud, because that money circulates in their economy. So what do they care? And someone else is paying for it. So the Trump administration is saying with the latest reforms, you got to keep it to 5%, which is still an atrocious 1 out of 20 benefits is fraudulent. That's a bad error rate, but it's better than 3 out of 20 benefits with the state of California. But we're talking billions of dollars. And then take a look at all the money he's giving to illegal immigrants. $13.1 billion for free health care for illegal immigrants each year. Our budget deficit is $18 billion, so 73% of our budget deficit is because of one giveaway to illegals. All the giveaways to illegals actually would cover the budget deficit entirely. But more so than the cost to taxpayers, when you put that many people on a government-run healthcare system, it creates longer lines for life-saving treatment and appointments for all the citizens that are supposed to be using that system. And this comes at a time when politicians like Newsom in California, to pay for illegal immigrant benefits, welfare, they're cutting services for citizens. They just cut, in-home hospice. So if you're dying in a hospital, you're not allowed to go home and die in the comfort of your own home or surrounded by your family. No, instead, we're going to spend more money to keep you in a more expensive hospital versus sending you home and letting you use hospice. This is just insanity. But no one in the media really kicks the tires and shines a light on it. So the final thing I want to talk about on the fraud is the government funding of political organizations. In California, they have perfected money laundering, taking taxpayer money and giving it to left-wing NGOs to do political activity. And they're not even trying to hide it anymore. I mean, these left-wing groups actively engaged in politics getting millions, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars of state and local taxpayer grants and contracts to do no bid contracts and have no deliverables. But boy, oh boy, they're out there ballot harvesting every election and recruiting and training left-wing candidates and supporting left-wing ballot measure propositions. That's happening every year here in the state of California.
All right, Carl, I know you got to run, but you're working hard on voter ID in the state. Give us a taste of what you're doing and how people can get involved.
So I've authored a state constitutional amendment to require two things: voter ID and citizenship verification for anyone registering to vote. This has a 75% approval rating. Even 53% of Democrats support voter ID and citizenship verification. But we need 1 million signatures to put this on the ballot. So we are at 712,000 signatures as of our last count earlier this week. We need 1 million by 12/31. So if people want to help out, chip in a contribution, or if you're in California and want to download, print, sign, and mail back the petition, just go to the website reformcalifornia.org. That's reformcalifornia.org.
I am really into this. I just talked about on the show, I think it was yesterday even, or about specifically how crazy it is, how they just enable cheating at every level. And it's just the way the state sanctions it to make sure Democrats can run up the score. So, Carl, you're doing good work, my friend. So Reform California, give the website one last time.
Reformcalifornia.org. People can follow all of our campaigns up there. We're the rebellion. We don't want to be refugees. We want to be rebels out here in the state of California to take back our state.
Beautiful sentiment, and I'm a part of it. So we'll work together on some stuff down the road. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. That's today's show. Thanks to producer Misty, Molly Marlowe for booking guests, John Cassio for pulling clips, and we'll talk to you next time.